Many of you will, I am sure, have had the experience at some point in your lives of falling in love. It may have led to a lifelong relationship. Yes, I can see a few people shaking their heads. I hope it comes. I hope it comes. And it might lead to a lifelong relationship, or it might fizzle out after a few months. Many of them do. But that's not the point. If you have had this experience, I'd like to encourage you to try to remember how it felt in those first hours and days after that first declaration of mutual love. Saying, "I love you," to that special person for the first time might have been a scary experience. If you were the one that said it first, you might not have known how it would have been received. You might not know how the other person would react, but still you might have felt compelled to say it. And remember the joy on hearing those words said back to you, or as you responded with them yourself. And think of that rush of feelings which followed, feelings like amazement, surprise, excitement, wonder, delight. Remember how you walked on air, how you couldn't think of anything else, how that special knowledge that you were loved by someone else made you feel. And I hope it turns out like that for you too as well. Hold on to that thought. People who have heard me preach before know that I always try to work out and explain what lies behind the texts from the Bible which we read. As with any ancient text, you cannot just assume that you can take it at what appears to be face value. From John's Gospel, Margaret read for us a passage which is presented as part of a long prayer spoken by Jesus. But is it? John's Gospel doesn't say where he said this prayer, but it comes between the Last Supper and Jesus' arrest later on that night. The other Gospels tell us that after celebrating the Passover meal, he went off alone to pray. So one might wonder, is there any way that a disciple hid nearby, taking it all down in shorthand, but the other Gospels didn't get hold of a transcript? I think that highly unlikely. So if I'm right, and this is not an verbatim account of an actual prayer spoken by Jesus, what is it? I want to offer you a way of thinking about this passage, which I think actually helps us to make better sense of what is really a very complicated piece of writing. I suggest that we think of this as a kind of love poem. A poem expressing the feelings, the experience of being loved in a very special way, written by someone and put into the mouth of Jesus. You see, the origin of this text is the community which created John's Gospel. Some 70 to 80 years after the death of Jesus. They're a small community, most of whom, probably all, weren't even born when Jesus died. But they have something which they are treasuring, something which makes them feel very special, something which they think about above everything else, something which they are expressing to one another through this piece of writing, through this poem. They are feeling loved, deeply loved. And they are amazed, they are delighted, they're full of wonder, they're excited. They are, if you like, walking on air. The thing which is making them feel so special and about which they are so excited is that they feel they know the truth about God. It is the truth which Jesus told his friends when he was alive and which has been passed on through the generations. It is the truth that God is love. God is love, not a distant, displeased, angry being, only to be approached in fear and trepidation, demanding strict adherence to a code of law. It is the truth that God is love, and everyone who loves and is loved is in God, for love is of God. They're excited because for them, this is a new understanding of the relationship between human beings and the divine. It's a relationship which is close rather than distant. It's loving rather than terrifying. And enveloped in this sense of divine love, they feel protected. The world can be a harsh place, a difficult place. But these people, this community, senses that God is with them, around them, within them. And this is both comforting and strengthening. This sense of belonging to Jesus and belonging to God that was quite new to them. They say they belong to God and not to the world. And this gives them a sense both of security and of purpose. They feel they have a job to do. And that job is simply this: to tell and show other people that they too belong to and are loved by God. That in the God who is love and in the love which is God, there is room for everyone. That's my job too, telling people about this. And it's the job of everyone who has heard the good news and senses in any way that they belong to God in Christ. And that's really what we are here to do this morning. Jamie won't understand today, but because in time Katrina and Grant will tell him, and his godparents and his grandparents will tell him too, he will come to know that he has been baptized. He will come to know that he too belongs to God in Christ. He'll come to know that he is protected in God's love, and that the love that he feels and expresses, that he gives and that he receives, is from God and of God, who is perfect love. And he too, in time, will come to join in the work of all the children of God, to live lovingly towards all his fellow human beings, and so do the work of God in the world. And one day, we hope, he will be just as amazed, just as excited and delighted, just as filled with joy as were the people who wrote John's Gospel, who knew and who wanted the world to know too that Christ prays for them and for us all. Amen.